Hello, everyone. We'll just wait 1 or 2 minutes until everyone gets settled in, and then we'll get started. I just got to know that everyone's in, so I think we can get started now. So welcome, everyone. This is kind of the virtual open house for SALA and its 3 professional programs. I'm Kees Lockman, and I'm the chair of the Landscape Architecture program.
Rookie mistake. And I'm John Bass, interim chair of the architecture program. We're also joined by Kylie, Elliot, and Richard, who will be sharing their insights from their experiences in the MLA and MArch program. Following their presentation and ours, there will be a Q&A where we can field your questions.
We're also joined by Janice O'Donnell and Tharane and Tara Deans, and they'll be helping also field some of the questions and respond to the questions that you have related to admissions or other types of things that we might not be able to answer.
So by now, many of you, and we certainly are familiar with land acknowledgements as a way to open meetings. They're a reminder that we live on land that is the ancestral home of Indigenous peoples. And more specifically, for those of us who work in the design disciplines, it's important to remember that we also played a role in the processes of settling this land, the colonial processes, but also that we can contribute to decolonizing efforts by educating designers who seek new and more just ways of living together. The topics and fields of inquiry undertaken by SALA faculty and students spring from our location. That location is both bounded by and extending from the city of Vancouver, a diverse and modern cosmopolitan place, I guess you could say. It extends there to our larger Cascadian temperate rainforest and beyond to the remoteness of the Canadian West or to the larger Pacific Rim that we're perched upon. SALA has just published its strategic directions document, which we have drawn from for this presentation. The document commits SALA to advance in measurable ways the 3 key principles seen here. As such, it will guide future decision-making policies, course offerings, and partnerships that we undertake. The strategic directions document anticipates that there are several grand challenges that a design education should deeply engage. Social justice and design activism are among those challenges. As an example, what we're seeing here is a project that was led by SALA faculty in kind of pulling together a national coalition of activists and designers and architects who organized Not for Sale, Architects Against Housing Alienation, which was Canada's entry to the Venice Biennale of Architecture, ongoing, actually. The exhibit is currently installed at the Canadian Pavilion in Venice, where earlier this summer, SALA students actually occupied the space and produced work in a studio environment that addressed housing inequities in Canada. Of course, among the grand challenges is climate change, a subject that impacts all scales of design, including landscape architecture, urban design, and of course, architecture. As an example, what we're seeing here is a project that was completed called Third Space Commons. It's a high-performance, carbon-neutral building built on the UBC campus. The project was developed and managed by SALA faculty and students in partnership with Dialogue, a multidisciplinary design firm here in Vancouver.
We live in a complex world in which we are faced with so-called wicked problems, problems with many interdependent factors that make them seem impossible to solve. And in order for designers to engage with this complexity, we need to be able to work across spatial and temporal scales and work across different disciplines. And at SALA, we aim to explore different ways in which design can make an impact, be it through visualizing problems or advocating for underrepresented groups, or through experimentation with different materials. We provide opportunities for students to explore the breadth of topics and scales, along with the tools and methods that will help them understand how design can meaningfully operate within these spaces. And we are a community of like-minded individuals coming from a wide variety of backgrounds and different ways of knowing. We work collaboratively in order to promote cross-pollination of ideas, mobilize knowledge transfer, and stimulate cross-cultural learning. And we increasingly seek to nurture interconnections among teaching, research, and practice. And these connections are made on campus, across disciplines, and with the communities in the region and beyond. And here in the background, you're seeing an installation that was done as part of the Powell Street Festival, which is a yearly or sometimes a bi-yearly endeavor in which SALA students are supervised by a faculty member. Often this has been Mari Fujita, to kind of explore ways to engage with space in a variety of ways. Across UBC, we often collaborate as part of the Campus as Living Lab initiative, which is a collaborative framework for researchers, students, staff, and external partners to leverage the campus to explore, develop, and test new ideas, and to share the knowledge gains from these experiences. And on the screen here, you're seeing two projects that were conceived through these partnerships, in which have resulted in installations that explore new fabrication technologies and strategic reuse of wood resources. Within the region, we partner with clients, communities, practitioners, and others interested in exploring questions around the form and functioning of our shared landscapes. We do this in a variety of means, including design studios, research projects, temporary exhibitions and installations, and facilitated dialogues.
We look forward to seeing you and welcoming you to SALA, and to see the ways in which you can engage this set of core missions that we have, and also to expand and go beyond those aspirations. What we're going to do now is give a very brief overview of the three professional programs, graduate programs at SALA: the Master of Architecture, the Master of Advanced. Well, we're not going to talk about advanced studies in architecture or landscape architecture. We'll focus on Master of Architecture, Master of Landscape Architecture, and the so-called dual degree program, or MARCLA. Some of you may have questions about the research degrees, and if so, we can certainly field those. And we're going to do a little overview of the curriculum here. And I think Emma will link in the chat to the pages on the SALA website if you want to dig more deeply into the individual courses, so you'll be able to do that. So the Master of Architecture program is a 3-year program that includes some summer study. So that program is composed of 4 or perhaps 5 sub-components: design, technology, which would include materials and engineering systems in buildings, media, the complex kind of ecosystem of digital and manual techniques of representation, 4D, 3D, 2D, and then history theory as well. The program is in some ways, it also has at the end, there's a 2-semester graduation project sequence. The first GP1 devoted to research and kind of the definition, and the second, the projection of that into the graduation project part 2. And in between that, sorry to make you go back, Case, but there's also a key studio, which is here referred to as ARC 521, Architectural Design Studio V, or 4, I'm sorry. And that's the so-called comprehensive studio, where there's a kind of synthesis of all the skills that have been learned in the core part of the program, which is really the first 2 years, into a kind of carbon neutral, kind of forward-thinking exploration and development of a highly specific building design that looks to climate change really as its kind of future, your future, and a future that you can begin to explore in the studio. Yeah, so Ace.
Yeah, the the landscape architecture program is set up fairly similar in that, you know, each semester has a design studio around which there's courses that support the design studio, whether they are around kind of ecologies and plants and vegetation, design history and theory, as well as material explorations, including kind of grading and drainage, stormwater management, and kind of green infrastructure explorations. So this would be the same as within the MArch program. There is also an advanced placement option. So for those that have backgrounds already within landscape architecture or environmental design, they're able to kind of get into the program and only do 2 years. So they get waived from several kind of fundamental and foundational design courses that are offered in the first year of the design program. And so we're happy to answer questions around that as well. And then similarly, the final year is the kind of graduate project, in which students are kind of encouraged to explore their own ideas about type of a project, the site, the ambitions of the project, and be guided through that in a 1-year sequence. And then we also have this dual degree, the Master of Architecture and Landscape Architecture. And I'll turn it over to John, who has been together with Cynthia Gerling, kind of managing this program over the past, I don't know when we started it. It's close to like 8 years ago now, I think, like 6 to 8 years ago.
Yeah, so as the title suggests, it's a degree that you can obtain professional master's degrees in both landscape architecture and architecture. It's a very demanding program, 4 years for non-advanced placement and 3 for students coming with a Bachelor of Science in Architecture, a similar degree in landscape architecture. If we could go ahead to the curriculum, we're not going to get in deep. Oh, maybe we just deleted the curriculum from the slide deck, didn't we?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so again, if you want to see a kind of map of the non-advanced placement version of the degree, you can find it. But there are many variants on those who come into the program with advanced placement, whether your advanced placement is in architecture or landscape architecture, obviously affects your the courses that are waived, and therefore there's a fairly customized course of study that Cynthia and I have typically prepared working with staff. I think Therany will be doing that to kind of get you your kind of 3 years in the program charted out. So again, we can certainly answer questions about the program. As I said, it's quite demanding. There's not a lot of elective study in the program. There's a bit more in both architecture and landscape architecture, the MLA and MArch degrees. But in the Marklet program, there are very few electives. And the good news is you get both degrees in essentially much shortened time frame. Put it that way.
So before I turn it over to Richard, probably first, and then Kylie and Elliot, Emma, did you want to say a few things about the Q&A and how it works? Because feel free for everyone in attendance now to start already typing in your questions. I think there's some protocol here that it's easier to do it through the Q&A system versus the chat system. So Emma, do you have the details on that?
Yeah, hi everybody. If you could put your questions in the Q&A rather than the chat, that would be great. It means everybody else in the meeting can upvote your questions as well, so we know that the questions that people most want answered are getting answered first. So that would be fantastic if you could use the Q&A instead of the chat. Your chat will probably not be seen. So Q&A, not chat. Thank you.
Okay, Richard, turning it over to you.
Awesome. Should be able to hear me, and I'm just going to share my screen here. So hi, everyone. As already has been mentioned, my name is Richard, and I am the president of the Architecture Union of Students, which is the student government representing all of the Masters of Architecture students at SALA. And I'm in my final year of the Master of Architecture program, and I also did my undergraduate degree here at SALA. So over the years, I've really had a chance to become familiar with the school and the experience of being a student here. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. So my favorite thing about SALA, and a huge part of my decision to come here for my master's, is the really rich student life and culture which takes place outside of classes, primarily in this space called the studio. For architecture students, studio is in the Frederick Lasserre building, where we all have our own desks, as well as a student lounge and bar. SALA students can access this space 24/7. People come to the studio primarily to do schoolwork. However, because we spend so much time together, it also becomes a really social and collaborative space. I find it super inspiring to just be in the studio and see all the different things that people are working on. And there's always someone willing to chat or grab a coffee if you need a break. The architecture student government organizes events throughout the year, which helps enrich the student experience. This can be a great way to get involved and contribute to everyone's time here at SALA. The events we organize range from social to academic and professional events, so I'll describe a few of them here. The first one, and possibly the most central to the student culture here at SALA, is called Good Times. This is a weekly event which occurs on Friday evenings immediately after classes finish. There's free food and drinks available at the bar, and it's just a great opportunity to kind of unwind after a busy week and chat with your classmates and other people. On Wednesdays, the bar becomes a breakfast bar, and we serve waffles to everyone. This is part of a larger health and wellness initiative, which also includes things like free yoga classes and fitness challenges. Throughout the semester, we'll invite professionals, artists, or other academics for guest lunchtime lectures. And we also invite the AIBC, which is the regulatory body for architects in BC, to come and provide info on things like how to become licensed after you graduate. Once per semester, we'll host a larger off-campus event in partnership with the Landscape Architecture Student Association. And this semester, we had our annual Halloween party called Saloween, and here you can see some of the winners from the costume contest. So that was a lot of fun. And lastly, I'll just mention that SALA also has a lot of opportunities to get you out of the classroom and out of studio. For example, we have a SALA-wide soccer team that plays on the weekends, and there's also other opportunities like international study abroads and design build projects, which all together really enhance the student experience here. So that's about it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Richard. And Kylie and Elliot.
Yep, we're just going to share our screen here. All right. Hi, everybody. So my name is Elliot, and I'm joined by Kylie today, and we are the co-presidents of the Landscape Architecture Student Association. This includes everybody in landscape architecture, as well as the markless students as well. So we're going to talk a little bit today about our experience. So just to give you a little bit of my background, I've been at UBC for about 8 years now. I actually started in urban forestry, and a lot of my background is with working for consulting and as an arborist. So really what took me into design and finding my way to the MLA program was the experience with getting zoomed in on the design elements rather than the whole urban forest. So I've done a lot with plants and how planting design can start to really build community relationships together. And I found that this program has really supported me with combining my undergrad as well as my grad program. And Kylie's going to share a little bit more about why she's in the program as well.
Yeah, so like Elliot, I also have a very long history at UBC. I did my undergraduate degree in civil engineering. So I focused really on structural engineering and project management. That photo of me there is with our team when we had to do like a bridge design in our final year, and we loved it so much we made a gingerbread version of it for Christmas. But working with engineering, I found that I started to become more and more interested in the landscape, and that's what really drove me to pursue this program. Some like project examples here, and over the last 2 years, it's been a really great time, and I found myself really wanting to focus on social equity and how reconciliation works in design.
So to highlight some of the courses that we've really enjoyed, we take a lot of field trips in the landscape architecture program. So I'd say it's, probably like half of our courses really have like heavy field trip experiences. So you can see some of these pictures. We visited Maplewood Flats to learn about bird diversity in our urban forests. We recently looked at the Landscape and Stone Supply Store for landscape technologies, just experiencing materiality. And then the photo at Rainbow Park shows one of our studio courses. So really coming together and actually experiencing what these landscapes feel like is a benefit of this program. And also building community is a big reason why we love this program. So you can see Kylie and I at one of the Halloween events, and there's really this element of building a community that you feel like you can kind of spend beyond just the school experience with. So we celebrate birthdays in studio through one of the pictures. There's been opportunities to go to Freeway Park in Seattle, visit some of the firms there. And then we've taken some camping trips outside of class as well too. So that sort of element really helps us enjoy the program.
Yeah. Studies get hard, but we also just love to celebrate the holidays. So these are some of our photos from Halloween, like pumpkin carving, or just doing Secret Santa over the holidays. It's just a nice way for us to relax a bit and bond together as a group. So to introduce LASA, the Landscape Architecture Student Association. So this is our team. We consist of 14 students from the MLA and the Marklet program. And our primary aim is really just to host events and from things like lunch and learns to like holiday parties, just to help get students together and also have an easier access to different resources and connections to professionals. So for example, in the summer, just when we have new students coming in, we usually do a summer beach social for incoming students and upper years to get to know each other. We also host a weekly tea times, which is every Friday we'll have a place with snacks and hot drinks, and it's just a nice spot to mingle before your studio starts. Like we mentioned, we have a bunch of holiday parties throughout the year, and also a fun event where Sure mentioned, and it's also held at the Annex building, which you can see in these photos. And lastly, there's a buddy mentorship program where we pair up a first year with a third year student, and it's just a nice way for us to be able to reach out to one another when we need help. Some new things this year are lunch and learns. So for example, we have professionals come in from the UBC SALA. They're a professional group in British Columbia that really looks at landscape architects, and they help us with an event on licensure. We also have really fun projects coming up, like painting a mural in the Annex building, and merch. So mugs and stickers are coming out later this year.
Yeah, and so if you guys want any other information, we have an Instagram account that you can follow. That's at @LASA_UBC. We also have an email, and then if you have any other further questions, just reach out to Kylie and I, and we can, answer anything you have. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send these links out in the chat in a bit.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. So hopefully this has provided a little bit of background about who SALA is, our programs, and a little bit of the student life and all the kind of activities that are part of being part of the programs here. Looking at the Janus has been typing away like a maniac in the chat or in the Q&A. I've already seen a lot of questions being answered, but
I think the next few, there's like 4 in a row that are sort of about how are things assessed during admissions meetings and things. So I feel like those are better answered by you guys, and I'll just keep plugging away on the others.
Okay, I can start, and then John, feel free to jump in. I think part of what we're trying to do with admissions is that we like to have a very kind of diverse community of students in our program. So we're not necessarily looking for only students that have a very specific design background. And in contrary, I think we're actually really looking for people that come from different backgrounds and really kind of create this environment where there's a lot of different perspectives and ideas that can support one another. So when it comes to developing your application without having that background, I think what we're looking for example, in the statement is like, why are you interested in our programs? What are you seeing as the challenges, and how do you think this degree can help you kind of move forward in your career goals? And we're interested in kind of understanding how you frame kind of problems and how you kind of move through iterations of kind of exploring potential paths forward. So I think much about design is about explorations and iterations of ideas and processes. So the more you can foreground that in your application, I think the better that would be. And if for example, if you're coming from a literature background, you might explain about how you write. I mean, writing is very much like a creative process, for example. So you could explain kind of conceptually how you go about writing and how you could see that translate into design. So those are things that I would think about if you're not coming from a design background, trying to kind of foreground in an application. I don't know, John, if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said, I would, there's a question here about, where was it? What do we look for when reading statements, and what mistakes can we avoid? It's an interesting way of putting it. I mean, what I think we look for is some depth of kind of knowledge about the discipline already. So I think often what we'll see are quite general statements about concerns or approaches. What I would always encourage people to do is to try to situate those in work that you can find that is already engaging with that. So giving examples of almost like precedents that demonstrates the depth of kind of engagement with a discipline, in this case architecture, but I think it's the same for architecture. If you're interested in social justice, okay, try to find some people who are engaged in that work and write about them, weave them into your writing. If you're interested in or concerned about climate change, there's certainly plenty of examples out there that you can start to kind of weave into your statement of interest. So I think just being as specific as possible about how your concerns are actually already the concerns of architecture, landscape architecture. These are things that, in a way, we're all concerned about, so, and are all working on. So I think it also isn't a bad idea to be able to include in your writing examples that are drawn from the SALA faculty, whether it be, you know, if you're applying it to the architecture program, it may be somebody in landscape architecture who really interests you, and you cite them as an example, or vice versa. So I would just encourage you to be as specific and kind of aware of how your interests are already being engaged by the design disciplines.
I just posted in the chat a link to the portfolio information session that we have up on YouTube as well. It's quite good and sort of addresses some of the non-design architecture student questions.
Yeah, and there was a question around, like, when we review all the components of your application. So it's like, it's not that one looks at a statement and then someone else looks at a portfolio. Like, we have multiple people reviewing each file so that we can have a discussion about it. It's just not one person making a decision. It's always multiple people. And yeah, we look at everything.
I mean, I would add a couple of comments about the portfolio and what you should be, if you're somebody who doesn't have a design background. Showing the ability to draw, to work in 2D media, whether drawings or collages, or that shows a certain engagement again with some of the media. And that doesn't mean like that you're able to draw an AutoCAD house design. It means actually using your hand. Or using digital media in creative ways. And the same goes for 3D. That I always look for students who, with non-advanced placement backgrounds, that they're working in both 2D and 3D. They're exploring questions of form, of composition, and are, you know, kind of getting somewhere with that. One of the question about what's a mistake is to think that, you know, if your portfolio is dominated by photographs, that's a problem, because it doesn't really indicate a kind of, apart from the kind of, okay, maybe you went somewhere interesting and you took some nice photographs, but I'd rather see a sketch of that trip, you know, five sketches of Paris rather than, you know, 5 photographs of its architectural monuments, say. And it suggests a kind of learning, training, kind of ongoing practice with your hand and your eye that are very central to design. So be careful about overloading your portfolio with photographs.
Maybe for Richard, Kylie, and Elliot, there's a question about how does UBC SALA foster student life balance, especially considering the program runs through the summer as well. You want to comment on that?
We
Sure.
could start. Oh yeah, Richard, you go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. What I was gonna say, I think there are some good programs in place to kind of help foster that kind of work-life balance. I think every graduate student, as far as I'm aware, receives a faculty advisor that they can reach out to at any point. And we also have within ARCUS, there's a buddy program where first-year students are assigned a existing graduate student who they can ask questions and kind of get help, because it can sometimes be a bit of a learning curve when you first get here, which I think is probably plays a big role in kind of that student life balance. And so I think that's one good thing. And then also a lot of the programming that we have to kind of get you out of studio, like, you know, fitness activities or the social events and things like that, I think help as well.
Yeah, we were just going to add a bit to that about health and wellness. It's really created sort of the ability, like throughout the week, whether it's Wednesday, Mondays, we have events kind of throughout the week on those, but really with like tea times on Fridays, like the idea is like everybody comes back after their class. Usually it's like a tree ID course outside, and we can all just kind of come together, drink tea, and just take a moment, you know, to relax. And we've had a lot of, I think, attendance on that. We also have a bunny days coming up, so we're bringing in, you know, animals to kind of help ease stress throughout the finals. So yeah, I think a lot of those initiatives have really benefited the community. Hopefully that helps. Yeah.
There's some questions both for the MLA and the MARC program, the Advanced Placement Program, if applicants should stress architectural or landscape architectural technical work over other artistic work. John, did you have some thoughts on that?
I'm whereabouts is this question?
I think it's
in the middle.
Yeah, well, I can say from a landscape architecture perspective. So I think, you know, the important really thing is that you need to have a bachelor either of landscape architecture that's not a professional bachelor degree, or you know, we have the BDES program here at UBC, but Manitoba has a BN program. So we would be looking for programs that have kind of the foundational components that we would deem would qualify a student for the advanced placement program. So that's a starting point. You know, the more you can share within your application skills specific to the domains of landscape architecture and architecture, that you already have core competencies in those disciplines, the better it will be in terms of making a case for advanced placement. This being said, that even if you get admitted into the 3-year programs, there's always opportunities to waive certain courses if you already if you can demonstrate you have those competencies. And you know, that typically works with that you can share a syllabus and assignments and your work related to a course, and then we can have conversations with the instructor of that course to, you know, to kind of understand whether or not you already have the skills, and you can then substitute that required course for an elective, for example.
Yeah, I'll come back. I want to just kind of start at the top here. What is the introductory workshop in the MARC program? One of the things that was a little misleading in the screenshots of the curriculum is that the intro workshop is taken by all MLA, MARCLA, and MARC students jointly. So it was actually embedded in, I think, both the MARC and the MLA, or the MARCLA and the MLA program, whereas it should have really been the first course because it's taken just before the start of classes. It's a week-long orientation slash kind of design exercise that is very light. It's generally kind of organized around an exploration of the city and the development of a kind of an analysis of your experience of that part of the city. It's done in kind of large groups, but it's all that more getting to know the city and deriving some kind of artifact that reflects your experience of the city is only part of it. There's a lot of let's go do the workshop orientation. Let's find out about the library. Let's get our student college-wide login and email addresses resolved. There's a lot of things like that. There's program meetings you have with the respective, whether it's MLA or a MARC program. So it's quite a varied experience that week. It's the best way I can answer it, but it's something that is not only in the MARC program. It cuts across all 3 of the degrees we're talking about today.
Let's see what other questions.
In the
So
first question, the one on my list, I know that for assessing non-background applicants, a big part is to assess their overall potential. How would you say you go about that? What do you look for in their work? I mean, I can only speak for myself here, but if I'm looking at a portfolio for a student without a design background at all, they come out of music or biology or the humanities, you name it. I'm looking for, I said it already a little bit, but like a kind of some understanding of the discipline of architecture. It could be technical. There's another question is, do we emphasize the technical over the conceptual? I don't think we judge or make that distinction, really. I think we try to imagine that both of those things are simultaneously involved in design, for sure. In fact, the comprehensive studio used to be called conceptualizing the technical. So I do think that we're looking for students or I think members of the community is another way of saying it, who are interested in technical issues, because architecture and I think, not to speak for you, Case, but the landscape architecture is very also technically kind of involved. There's lots of technical questions that are associated, but that doesn't mean that there aren't conceptual or social questions that are involved in them as well. And I mean, basically design is very synthetic. And I think the more that can come through in a complex way in what you write, certainly that's important. And, I look for that in the writing of a advanced placement student, some indication that they understand some of the complexity and nuance of design, not just kind of oversimplify it in a way, but they in a way that it's, Case, you mentioned the wicked problem, this kind of insoluble but absolutely compelling and vital thing that we must engage, and I think that's a really important thing to understand, that many climate change, for instance, these are wicked problems, and we have to find ways to engage them technically, but also creatively. So if you can write about things like that, whether it's climate change or social justice or just anything, beauty, then you're on your way, to having an intelligent statement that will be well received. But give it some thought. It's important that, especially for an non-advanced placement student, that the statement has some depth of thinking.
And I would say, like, we don't compare apples to oranges in that way. Like, I think we kind of look at a pool of people that come from non-design backgrounds, and we compare those against each other, and we look at those that come from a design background and compare those to each other. So again, like as I mentioned, like, we're looking for kind of a diversity of people that join our community, and so that's why we're again, there was a question about what's the spread of, I think, students with different backgrounds. I mean, again, like, we don't have full control over that, because obviously we kind of go through the kind of admissions process, and we send out admissions offers, and obviously we don't know who's going to accept, so that it always changes. But I don't know, like, if Richard and Kylie have a sense of colleagues in your class, like, what are some of the backgrounds that of the people that you see around you? I don't know if you could comment on that.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to use this microphone. I think it works a bit better. Off the top of my head, there's a wide range of people from different engineering backgrounds, but then also fine arts, and a lot of people that I'm thinking of off the top of my head studied fashion. So yeah, quite a range.
We also have quite a range. So we have students with engineering backgrounds, industrial design, environmental design, science backgrounds, students with an architecture background as well. Forestry.
History.
Yeah, history.
I think that's everything.
Yeah, and I think almost everyone in our cohort has a different background, except for like one or two people that might be the same, like maybe two engineering. So it is very diverse. Hope that helps.
Okay, I see a question for me. When you say 3D, do you mean that you would like to see three-dimensional art like ceramics, woodworking, etc., or do you mean representing three dimensions? I mean, both is the answer. But I mean, when I said it, I was thinking of actual 3D things: ceramics, sculpture, furniture, that kind of thing. But I mean, to your point, it also, you know, it wouldn't be the worst thing that you're, you know, some of the work you do is simply sketching, like I mentioned Paris, you know, like drawings like streetscapes in Paris would be beautiful, or just quick sketches that are notional, but there's a kind of intensity and kind of depth of kind of looking at something. Those can be three-dimensional too, but they're 2D, right? They're drawn in 2D. So I mean, I think what I really meant at the core is that there's 2D media. They might be representing perspective or other kinds of spatial depth. And then there's working with your hands on things in 3D. You should really have both of those things in a portfolio.
I think there's a question about students that are applying for a second or third time. Like, I would really probably reach out to either myself or to John, to Janus or Tharane, and you know, we're happy to advise as much as we can. Obviously, we can. There's certain ways that we can help you, but I mean, it obviously won't guarantee at kind of entry into the program or an offer to be admitted. But yeah, we're certainly here to help and provide feedback. You know, I would start with Tharane and Janus, reach out there, and then we're happy to help and, you know, potentially connect you to others if there are specific questions. So there was something about, what did I see? References. Like, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I like to see somewhat different references. So I think if it's 3 references from 3 academics from the same program, it tends to be a little bit hard to kind of, let's say, hear about the kind of the different skills and kind of elements that you could bring to the program. So like, if you have experiences, whether it's like you know, volunteering, or you've worked in practice, or you've been a, you know, let's say a teaching assistant, or whatever it might be, that can kind of, the references can speak to different strengths. That would always be my preference, and getting 3 people talking about how you are in studio. So yeah, I don't know, John, what your thought is on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of agree, although I tend to favor, let's say, the majority of the references being academic. So if you're asked to give 3 references, I would shoot for at least 2 academic references. I would avoid family, friends, pretty much across the board, and you know, they do show up, and that's probably the weakest sort of reference. And I agree with Case about something from either an employee, an employer, although even there I think it matters, because they're, you know, some employee, like the quality of the reference should somehow, and the context through which the referee is making comments should try to connect back to something that you know are kind of passionate about. So I would rather see a reference from your work with a volunteer activity that you did, as opposed to that you worked in a shop for a few summers in a row, like a kind of retail shop. You know, those kind of references might speak to your kind of hard work and kind of you know, these kind of core, being responsible, showing up on time, these kind of things. But I'm not sure beyond that they're giving us a real insight into what you want to do with your, you know, with your career. So I would just try to make sure that they are 2 out of 3 academic, and that third one, I think you have some latitude with it, but you know that it should be somebody who can speak to your passions. Let's put it that way.
I saw a few questions going by about if you apply for advanced placement and you don't get into advanced placement, do we let you into the 3-year program? For MArch, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but we have not done so.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your transcript will essentially determine which of the 2 streams you would enter into. So as I said, if you have a Bachelor of Science degree, so for instance, the Carleton degree, but not the U of T degrees, the University of Toronto degrees, if you have at least I mean, what we're looking for is a bachelor's degree that has a significant technical component to it. Because what we do is we waive you out of an entire first year. So if you're interested in whether you could waive a year, have a full year waived out in the MArch program, study the curriculum on our website and ask yourself, well, have I had the equivalent of 2 media courses? Have I had architectural technology and structures, the kind of intro to those courses? Have I had some architectural history? Have I had the equivalent of 2 design studios? You know, and that, because we're really mapping your undergraduate degree against our first year of study. And so, and generally, there are a lot of programs that are kind of design degrees that don't have, like the U of T degrees, that do not have the full suite of technical courses that we would need to have you waive out. And so the U of T graduates basically are non-advanced placement students. And those who are, so Carleton's architecture program comes to mind, one of the streams anyway, it's either advanced placement or not for us. So, yeah.
Okay, what else do we have? What's the value of the CV or resume compared to the portfolio statement? John?
Yeah, no, I think you've said it well about we're looking to create a diverse community of people that have diverse experiences. So what is that? But also are diverse within themselves, you know, so well-rounded people who have traveled. Travel is a big part of it. And I think some engagement with, you know, kind of kind of occupational activities, volunteering, these kind of things. These all matter, I would say. What I would say is I'm speaking now about non-AP students, you know, we're here to kind of teach you skills and so I would be careful about assuming that what we need in our students, because we're not a vocational degree. We're not looking for people who have already learned the basics of AutoCAD, for instance. So I mean, so I think it's important for you to understand the difference between the degrees that are offered here and more vocational degrees that you might see at BCIT, for instance. Not to diminish it at all. It's just to say that the focuses are very different. That there's this question around how do we focus more on the conceptual or the technical, and you know, I would say both is the answer, but both in a way that's demanding, you know, that does achieve a high level of technical resolution, but also a sophistication of kind of framing that culturally and conceptually. And so that definitely cannot be reduced to I can use AutoCAD really well. So, you know, that's not really what we're looking for. And there are always, you know, among our applicants, and Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, but we get on the order of 500 or 600 applicants for about 100 offers that we make, something like that. So roughly 1 in 6, 1 in 5, or 1 in 6 of the applicants will be offered admission to the MArch program. And, you know, a fair number of those who aren't, not a huge number, but, you know, 40, 50 are kind of assume that what we're looking for, essentially, that we are a kind of a vocational degree, you know, where there's a kind of technical skill set that we're about. That's really not what a graduate degree in architecture is.
There was a question that went by earlier that got answered in writing very quickly, but I think some people might be interested in it, about study abroad and what kind of study abroad opportunities we have. And I know, Richard, you just went on the study abroad recently, so maybe it's a chance to talk about your experience doing that.
Sure. Yeah. So this summer, SALA offered a study abroad trip to Japan. So it was about a 3-week trip, and there was about a group of 18 students, I believe. Mix of all the different SALA programs, so Master of Landscape Architecture, and the BDES program. It was worth 6 credits, so the equivalent of 2 elective courses, and we had so much fun. I wish I could show you all of our pictures. Yeah. Is there any specific thing they wanted me to talk about, or?
No, I think just talking about study abroad, and then that those opportunities are available.
Yeah.
So this year, I'm sorry, go ahead, Richard.
This year they're doing the Japan trip again, and there's also a trip to Europe for a similar amount of time, I believe between 3 and 4 weeks. And every year it seems SALA offers 1 or 2 opportunities like that.
Yeah, and I noticed a question about the studies abroad, whether there be, if I read it correctly, opportunities to do that or design build in year 3. And I would say that's very much the case, either year 2 or year 3. The first summer, at the completion of your first year, there's 2 required classes. A class that I teach called Contemporary Practice, and another class called Communicated Construction, that I would highly recommend you just kind of take and get it out of the way, so that you don't have it hanging in the balance later. And therefore it just clears up space so that you can take studies abroad, you can do design build, and, you know, as you move through the program. So that, you know, I believe quite strongly that it's good to kind of get those core courses out of the way. Makes the first year more of a slog, perhaps, but I can only speak for Contemporary Practice. It's kind of fun, and you'll get a lot out of it, I think. And Communicated Construction is a good kind of foundational class for the comprehensive studio that you'll take the following year, and then you know, after that completion of your second year, that summer or the following summer, if you so chose, you know, then things open up in the 3rd year.
I think there's a question about, yeah, if you have video or animations in your portfolio, you can put a QR code or a link in your portfolio, maybe with a screenshot or something like that. And like all the files are reviewed digitally, so it should be easy to click on them and take to whatever platform you've posted those videos.
There's a question about GPA when reviewing transcripts. Yeah, I mean, reviewing transcripts matters because let's say, for instance, that there's something in your personal life that kept you from really performing at a high level in your sophomore college year, but that your junior and senior years, you really step back. And that might, when you look at an overall GPA, it may actually mean that you have a lower GPA that, given the competitiveness in our programs, that might seem to take you out of the running. But what we do is we look, like, if that's the kind of thing, like if something comes up in your personal life that you want us to make note of, then make sure it's stated in your personal statement. And then we will look at the transcripts, and if we see a clear evidence of progress, of kind of better success in your classes, your GPA, as you're moving, kind of advancing through your undergraduate degree, that matters. I mean, obviously the opposite is not a good thing, but if you're getting better grades, that does matter. And that, so we don't just look at a cumulative GPA. We also look at we look for, some curiosity, I would say, too. If you're an engineer, it would be great if you took a creative writing class, for instance, right? Or if you're a creative writing person, it would be great if you took I'm trying to think what it might be besides saying engineering, but that wouldn't, I'm not sure that would make sense. But I mean, that we're looking for a breadth of experience and interest in a transcript as well.
I also sometimes suggest students, if they have a statement about their transcript, they can upload it in the place where their transcript is, and remove it from their statement, just so that they don't fill their statement up with.
Janice, that is a much better idea than mine.
What do you think? Are there any other? We're reaching the end of the session. I don't know. Emma and Janice, Tara, are we gonna post the answers to the questions on the website? What's the process here?
Yeah, I can answer that. We will be posting the recording of the session as well as a document that captures all the written Q&A answers on our website in about a week. I will give you the caveat that on Monday, December 4th, our website is going to be changing quite dramatically. We have a new website that's going to be launching. It will be very easy to find. It'll be on the front page. And if you're looking for admissions information, where our current website, you have to go, there's program information and admissions information separate. They'll all be on the same page now. So it'll be a little bit easier to navigate and find. So yes, it will be posted, and just a heads up that things will be in a bit of a different spot coming up on December
4th. There's a question about international student applications, whether they're considered differently. No, I don't think they are. They're essentially, what are considered differently, as Case pointed out, is the non-advanced placement and advanced placement students. But then within those two pools, they're kind of apples and apples, I guess you'd say.
There's a question about GRA.
We don't really look at GRAs.
Or GPA.
Well,
there's a minimum GPA, which, Janice, do you know the minimum GPA?
Yeah, 76% or a B+. And depending which institution you're coming from, there's a lot of different systems, but yeah.
So I would say that we have admitted students with a lower GPA. Like, we have the opportunity to make a case for certain students. So let's say you had either whatever struggles you had in the first or second year in your undergrad, and kind of that resulted in your overall GPA kind of plummeting, and you're kind of showing kind of an upward trajectory, or like if there's reasons for a lower GPA that you can communicate, please do so. We know, like, we all go through journeys, and sometimes things don't go the way you had planned. But I think the more you can kind of talk about that and what the reasons for that were, we'll take that into consideration. So if your statements and your portfolio and all your other material is very strong, again, it's not any one thing is a make it or break it. We look at the entire package, and we're able to make certain cases for applicants that we believe are very strong candidates for joining our community, and the GPA being low is one of them. But obviously, it's better if your GPA meets the minimum requirements.
There's a question about grade scaling. I know that it does affect, if you have an undergraduate degree in biochemistry, and you only had the equivalent of, say, a 78 or something marginal to our minimum grades, we noticed that you took a very demanding program, but we're not scaling it. We don't have Janus, unless I'm mistaken here, you don't have a magical scale for other degrees that somehow we can discern are harder. So what we do is, as Case just said, okay, that's a tough, demanding, science-based degree, but okay, what do you know about architecture, landscape architecture? How thoughtful is what you've written? Do you have a portfolio that's kind of curious and inventive? It's the combination of things, right? And you could say that for degrees in things that one might assume somehow grade more in a more relaxed way. But so I think it's the combination of things. And I think conversely, if you have a background that say from Emily Carr or a fine arts program where there's quite a range of media, but that there's nothing just about the range of media that is kind of automatically qualifying, I guess. There's also kind of, we look for content in the way we, I think, look at fine arts portfolios. How engaged are they in some passion that is kind of outward looking, in kind of public art or activism, or just in ideas, how is the work actually more than just form? Matters as well for those on the other side, not from the sciences, but from the kind of degrees or undergraduate programs that are more kind of creative. Just being creative is not kind of an automatic opening into the program. It's a question of its critical creativity, its kind of conceptual depth, etc. So, yeah.
I might go a little bit off the board here with this question, but I think it's probably something a lot of people are interested in. For the students we have here, do you guys maybe have an example of like what kind of work you put in your portfolio when you applied here? It's probably pretty interesting to hear kind of a concrete example of what actually went into a portfolio.
I can speak to that a bit first. So I came from a more technical background, so I had a lot of kind of mapping and more forestry based. So I tried to show examples that more spoke to what I did outside of my job and my previous school. So I had a photography that I included. I did some kind of modeling to just kind of show that I was curious about things outside. But I also did include things like GIS mapping, and really did speak more to the technical side as well. So I think kind of showing a wide breadth of different things is helpful to stand out. I don't know, Kylie, if you have anything you want to share.
Similar experience. So engineering was also a technical background, and when I did my portfolio, I definitely struggled with what to put in my portfolio. I didn't have any renderings or really creative things. But when I was doing my portfolio, I put in a lot of group projects. So for example, that bridge capstone project that I did with my team, I included screenshots of a 3D model that we built, or concept sketches, photos from the site visits that we took, just to show the process of how we went through the project. And then in terms of like my own hobbies, I had some drawings that I did, a little bit of painting. I think there was like a clay sculpture that I did at some point that I really liked, so I put that in the portfolio as well. So I tried to just show like a range of interests in travel photography. So yeah.
My portfolio is maybe a bit less fun because I had been studying architecture before in my undergrad, and also I had spent some time working at an architecture firm. So a lot of my projects were previous work from school in my undergrad, and then some of my professional work. And then there were a few fun little things like examples of graphic design I had done, or like just I did try to show ways that I had continued learning different things after I graduated. For example, like I got a little bit into like web design, and so I included a little section about my website and a link to it. So yeah.
I think there were some questions about the AP program as well, on the MarkLab program as well. And I would say, you know, it's a very selective program. We only have about like 4 to 6 students that on a yearly basis get accepted into that program. And having reviewed those applications for the past 3 years, I would say that there's a lot of applicants that I've seen that either talk mostly about one discipline, and then at some point say like, you know, I also like landscape architecture, and I think it would be very great to get a dual degree. So I think the one thing that I would really recommend for kind of applying to the MarkLab program is really explaining why do you see what's the benefit of obtaining 2 degrees and how are they related to one another. You know, how could you see that interaction, and how do you see kind of pursuing a degree, kind of a dual degree, kind of playing out in your career as well, and related to the content that you've been a part of so far. So I think, yeah, you know, sometimes we've seen students apply for both the MarkLab program and either the architectural landscape program, and they almost put in the same statement, and I don't think that's going to be very useful. So really, you know, if you're applying for MarkLab, really make a good case of your understanding of the interconnectedness of the 2 disciplines, but also why you kind of what's the potential that you see within it. So yeah, there was last question, and then
there was a question that disappeared about what do we look for in an AP portfolio, and it was answered, I guess. So I'm not sure whether I should get too deeply into it. But among the things I would say we're looking for, because we assume that there's a set of skills and kind of control over types of representation, a variety of means of representation, 3D and 2D. What I'm looking for are a few really good cross sections of buildings or of landscapes and buildings, like that show spatial imagination and a kind of rigor, you know. So, but spatial imagination is really important in AP portfolio evaluation would be my top recommendation.
So I'll answer one more question, and then maybe we'll turn it over to Richard for the final word. There's one question for Richard. I think there's one question about, I mean, it leads into licensure. So both the MLA and the MArch degrees are professional degrees, which means that it puts you in path for licensure. It doesn't mean that after completing the degree that you are already a registered or licensed architect or landscape architect. You would still have to go into you know, an intern process, which is different for the architecture trajectory than for landscape. But for landscape architecture, you would have to work under supervision for at least 2 years, and as part of that you will have to do a series of exams, and once you pass all of those, then you can become a registered landscape architect. So the same thing, it's somewhat different, but the similar trajectory applies to architecture and becoming a licensed architect. And so again, this degree will put you on that trajectory. And then Richard, the final word is for you. What made you want to come back to get your graduate degree?
Well, I think the most basic answer is that you're limited, as far as I know, across all of Canada in terms of, well, you can't become a registered architect without a Master of Architecture degree. There might be kind of some other roundabout ways of doing it. Like I think there used to be some kind of mentorship thing you could do. I don't think that's very common anymore. And I wanted to become an architect, but also I just really enjoy the environment here, and I feel like in my undergrad, a lot of the things we touched on felt kind of only surface level, just because we were just being introduced to these things. And also it was quite a range. Like I studied architecture, landscape architecture, and urban design. So I wanted to get a bit deeper into architecture. There's a lot of more detailed courses in the master's program that really have introduced me to a whole new range of kind of information that makes design a lot more fun. Things like structures, architectural technology, environmental systems and controls are things that we didn't really touch on in my undergrad. So all reasons why I came back. And then I think there's also a question about what I plan on doing afterwards. And I do plan to work professionally again, although I would like to kind of get accredited or get registered as soon as possible so I can do my own thing and have a bit of freedom. So I also don't really have a very detailed plan. Hopefully that answers it.
Well, with that, I think I wanted to thank Emma, Janus, Tharanay, Tara, Kylie, Elliot, Richard, and John for kind of helping, and all of you obviously for joining in and asking questions. As mentioned, like we'll post this on the website. Feel free to reach out to Tharanay and Janus. So Tharanay will handle questions around the MLA and the MARC program, and Janus handles questions about the MARC program. Do you want to put your email addresses in the chat?
I just did it.
Okay. And then obviously you can also reach out to John and myself. I'll put my email address in the chat as well. And then, yeah, if there's any other questions, we'll answer them that way. But thank you very much.
Yes, thanks everybody for coming. And thank you especially to our intrepid answerers who almost got up to 100 answers in the last hour or so, which is pretty impressive.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.